Welcome to the New England Job Show. Today, we're delighted to have with us Bob McDonald, who is Senior Vice President Investments of a leading financial services company. Bob, thank you so much for taking time off to spend with us. In your 26 years of experience, I'm sure every possible question has been put to you. We are going to try and tap into your massive amount of expertise in a very short time today. Bob, no one really, I think, anticipates being laid off, do they? But how does one or should one be budgeting for that dreaded moment?
Well, I think the budgeting process would start early. And it would start before the thought of being laid off. It would be at the start of your work career when you set aside emergency funds. And we recommend that be anything from 3 months worth of budget needs to 12 months. Or if you're really insecure, more. And that would allow you the freedom to work on getting a job and network on getting a job while you can pay your bills.
But I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who just don't have savings or are bad at budgeting. How are they going to manage when this suddenly falls upon them?
Well, there are people out there, but there are also websites out there that you can rely on. And there's nothing like taking the pad and pencil out and saying, here are my expenses, and try to be very precise, and here are my assets. And the question that really comes along is, will my money last me? It would be much like a retiree who says, will my money last me the rest of my life? Well, this question is a little more insolvable because we don't know how long you might be unemployed. Right. So we want to have a pretty good cushion in place so that you can not disrupt your life too much.
So you get the pink slip, you have no idea how long you're going to be unemployed. It seems to be getting longer and longer. I've spoken to people who've been out of work for a year, some 2 years, pretty scary. How does one actually go about budgeting your expenses, not knowing, as you said, how long you're going to be out of work?
Well, let's just take an example. Let's say you have 2 cars and you have an automobile insurance policy. You might want to shop it around, check out where you can make some savings. For example, the other thing would be coupons, shopping. There are so many ways that you can cut costs that most people don't really use them or think about them. But it all starts with taking a very clear look at, again, your expenses, your assets, and trying to match them up.
Right. So we talk about cutting out, the little luxuries of life, but at the same time, we need to understand that the mindset of a person who's unemployed is pretty low, and you're pretty depressed. How much do you think one can really cut out, the little joys of life, and how much does it help at the end of the day?
Well, sometimes it's necessary. For example, the vacation that you felt entitled to is probably going to have to be deferred, or maybe some of the hobbies or some of the things that you would normally do. I know a fellow who loves to play tennis, but had to give up his tennis contract while he was unemployed. So I think these things also take a toll, and that's why I'm very pleased about the job show, and particularly the involvement with Rotary, where people can network and get together and talk about these things, because the feelings that people have when this happens are not unique.
Right. All of us on the job show, and indeed all of us who belong to networking groups, I think have realized the tremendous value of belonging to such groups, because not only do you get the advice and support of others, it opens up so many other different avenues. So I'm glad you agree with the idea, and I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of people who've actually validated that fact. Bob, so back to the question of savings. Assuming you're someone who has a decent amount of money put away, how do you actually budget out how long that money is going to last?
Well, that's a little trickier question and a little harder to do, and sometimes you need professional help to do it. There are plenty of financial goal analysis tools that are on websites of financial companies or just under the topic of finance. And they will let you plug in the numbers, run it out, and you can create any scenario you want. You can say, how am I for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? and it will dump back the information to you, and then you can go about your business and try to fit it in.
Right. And then what about those who really don't have savings? I mean, how bleak is the scenario for them, and what advice can you offer them?
Well, the first thing you do is find out what the unemployment insurance status of your state is. It differs from state to state. There are great websites with, I'm going to leave you with some of them today, that you can tune into, and they will tell you about unemployment, how it works, how long it lasts, and whether you're eligible or not.
Right.
So I think that's really the first place to start. Also, sometimes when people leave the employ, there might be some kind of a benefits package offered for them. Right. I think probably one of the most problematical areas is healthcare. And I was just reading this morning that COBRA has changed. Instead of picking up 65%, it's now 35%. Now, that's a big help, but let's understand that people who are employed are paying around 16%, so it's still twice as much. But they've also loosened the deadlines to come in, and they've also made it somewhat retroactive to September 1st of last year.
Right.
So I'm just giving an example. Healthcare can be very crucial for some people and not for others. So this is a very personal type area. Is it that you have savings and you need to tap it? Well, maybe you want to look at what retirement savings you have. And if you're over 50, look at a 72T withdrawal, which is allowed under law as long as you take it for at least 5 years or through 59 and a half. So without bogging us down in a lot of details, there are a lot of different things that you need to do. And you can find out about websites, networks, financial professionals.
Right. You did bring up the retirement funds question, and it is a vast area which we will in fact be dealing with on a separate show. But we do have a small audience here, and they possibly might have questions for you at the end if you wouldn't mind answering. Now, when it comes down to all these monthly payments that we have to make, you've got to pay your mortgage, your car insurance, your car payment. Is there? I mean, each is as important as the other. But how, if at all possible, do you prioritize those, or how do you weigh and measure the...
That's a difficult job. One of the first things you might want to do is look at your mortgage and possibly talk to your mortgage banker or your bank and find out what kind of flexibility or what kind of changes might save some money for you.
Yep.
I think that's a really important step. For a lot of other people, it's not just the mortgage, it might be credit card debt. And one of the things that you would want to focus on is keeping your credit rating okay.
Right.
Or solid, and making payment plans possibly if you're overexposed to credit card debts.
Right.
So I think that those are areas where the credit cards or credit card companies will work with you, and you have to talk to them and find out what they do, how you do it, and how it could save you money. But I think that these things are all difficult, and again, it's an individual experience. Some people have massive credit card debt, some people have none. Right. Some people have giant retirement savings, some people have none.
Right.
So these are all very, very tough subjects. But budgeting is at the key to it. And watching your expense side is crucial. And trying to stretch out payments if you can, or trying to save something here. There's a discipline involved.
Right. And then there's also, Bob, the question of the shame and humiliation that goes with being laid off. I mean, I was trying to get in touch with someone who I've lost contact with, and I found out that he doesn't want people to know that he's unemployed, and so he's feeling that sense of guilt. How does one reconcile that with at the same time reaching out to people for help, especially financially?
Yeah, I'd go back to the networking and also the self-worth part of this is very difficult. And what you do is you have to look inside, you have to get yourself going, and you can't give up. And I think that the networking side helps you. There are other people in the same way. What are they doing? Maybe there's some methodology that you can model yourself after. Because I think the psychological part of this is probably the hardest thing.
Right.
The stress induced through the inability to pay your bills or the inability to find work is massive. And I think that other people who have been through it can help as guides or just touches for a conversation and understanding. But I think you're right. It's a very, very difficult situation, but it's not unique. All you have to do is look at the numbers that the government's publishing about unemployment. It's a gigantic number, and it grew again this morning.
Right. And by the time this show goes to air, who knows where the numbers will be at. So
that's right. And also, I think you have a changing set of rules. For example, the COBRA rules, or the retirement rules, or let's say you have children in college. You have 529 plans. There are ways of using all of these things to your advantage, but they're very technical. They would take much more than 15 minutes to talk about and understand, but they can be a help.
Right. Now, Bob, what about the question of having a second income stream? I mean, is that something that you would advise someone, you know, as a backup measure? You know, have a little something on the side where you can use your talents or earn extra money. How does that whole thing work?
Absolutely. I think one of the things, if you're on unemployment, you have to be careful about how much money you earn, because it could knock out your unemployment benefits. But it goes back to that rainy day savings equation. Do you have rainy day money? Do you have liquidity that can last you 6 months, 12 months? Have you set it aside? Can you follow your interest or your side hobbies out and make some money off them? I think the answer sometimes is yes, you can. It's not easy, but you can. So I think the second income reminds me of the savings. Maybe it's something that you sequester right away. This money is going into my rainy day account for my future needs, whatever they may be. And it never hurts to save, and it never hurts to have an income source that you can turn on. And it never is too early to start thinking about those things.
On the whole, Bob, how good are Americans at saving?
Well, that's a really great question.
To back that up?
It's a very timely question, because right now it's fabulous. We're around a 5% savings rate. We have been in a negative savings rate for as long as I can remember, because we're a nation of spenders and consumers. And the big box retailers are going down the tubes because of lack of spending and lack of confidence. And right now, that's what's happening all across the land. So it's an interesting situation, and it will change, and there will be confidence, and things will perk up, but it's going to take some time.
What are the pros and cons of filing for unemployment benefits? Are there, in fact, any cons? What are the negatives?
Well, I think the negatives in talking to people would be that people don't realize that they have to pay taxes on it. So if you're getting unemployment, you have to really turn around and say, gee, am I saving some of this because I'm going to have a tax hit? And the same thing goes for some compensation you might get for your company to tide you over for a couple of years. That money will also be taxable. So I'd say getting your tax situation straightened out and saving some of that is big. I think the other thing that I find disturbing is that a lot of people just don't want to take unemployment. They don't feel good about it. And the other thing is, if you're getting unemployment, but you also have a part-time job where you're making, let's say, a couple $100s a week, it would jeopardize your unemployment.
We really do appreciate your being here and sharing your expertise with us, and for you just simply taking time off from your busy day to come over. And perhaps we'll have you back sometime to answer more of these burning questions. Again, on behalf of